Your subconscious is sacred. It is the key to healing from within. If you want to heal the outside, you first must heal the inside. So, if you're ready to break free from subconscious patterns and finally align with your true self, you're going to watch this episode, or you're going to want to watch this episode, listen to this episode. I'm joined by Jason Shivers, a hypnotherapist, energy healer, consciousness explorer, and together we're going to talk about how the subconscious is sacred. It's holding your keys to healing, transformation, and intuitive awakening. And really cool, Jason has a really awesome backstory as he grew up in a commune, like a metaphysical commune. So I want to hear all about it. We're going to talk about anxiety, maybe some self-sabotage, imposter syndrome, all of the things that we want to know how to release so we can live that more abundant and intentional life full of joy and magic and all of that. That's what we have going on for you in this episode with Jason Shivers, so stay tuned. Hello and welcome to the Charmed Life podcast. This podcast is all about magic, metaphysics, mysticism, and the unconditional love of the universe. And I am your host. My name is Trisha Carr. Welcome to this episode. We are live on YouTube as usual, and we are also, we're streaming this to the RSS feed when it is available. So welcome to the program, the episode, however you're listening. In addition to my wonderful guests, who I will let speak here in a moment. If you're listening and you hear little taps on the microphone, or if you're watching and you see a bird fly around the room, that's on purpose. That's our studio bird. Her name is Aliel. She's my parakeet. So welcome to the show, Jason. Finally.
And I am your guest, Jason Shivers.
You are. We've been trying to get this together for a while, so thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's fun, and I'm excited.
And you're a podcaster yourself. So this
I
is
am.
I
actually was recording one earlier today with another student, colleague of mine, and it was a great kind of precursor to this. So I feel like I'm podcast warmed up.
Yeah, that was the opening act, and here we are.
Yeah. Even though it's been pre-recorded, and I'll edit it, and it'll come out, in a week or whatever. But.
Well, for those of you who are on the live stream, please say hello. Let us know where you are, what you're thinking about today. If you have any questions, Jason and I met at HMI College of Hypnotherapy. I'm an instructor there, and Jason graduated very recently, but you have a very long history of healing of all kinds. You added hypnotherapy to your toolkit, and have already been working basically in the subconscious as an energy healer. So how about I don't tell your story and you tell your story? Where would you like to start? Tell us all about. I want to hear all about it. Wow. I want to hear your backstory, and I want to hear your story. So what's going on with you?
Well, we'll jump into like a mid story then.
Okay.
So yeah, when my first kind of introduction to energy work was growing up in this metaphysical commune, and it was just part of the things that everyone talked about. It was just kind of like natural of like, people working on people's necks and just, almost the laying on of hands, but in a casual way. Like people are sitting around playing cards at a table, and then there's one person standing behind, like rubbing shoulders or rubbing a neck, or someone's getting an adjustment in the other room. And as a teenager, there was something about it that just felt like supernatural. But one thing that happened back then that I noticed as I started kind of really getting into it and having more fun with it was that if I worked on more than three people, the next morning I would wake up with like a sore throat, and I would have cold symptoms for a week because I was using all of my energy but I didn't know how to replenish it besides drink water or get a good night's rest. But it was like, okay, so then I was telling people I can only work on three people, and that was it until fast forward 25 years when I was introduced to Reiki, and it was like, oh, I have an endless source of energy to flow through me. Now I can just work on people all day long if I wanted to,
because you're not using your energy. But you weren't taught that as a like the the commune didn't teach you the difference between using your own energy or
There
using.
was some connection to visualization of like a white light streaming through, but it wasn't that I could draw on it and to let it do the work.
Ah.
There's very much a more shamanistic kind of connection
Mm.
to, allowing that love and energy and, intention of healing and relaxation to pour through you to
Mm-hmm.
someone. But it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't that it was coming from some higher source. So it's really interesting because growing up in this metaphysical community, there was a lot of introduction and use of metaphysical tools like biorhythms and astrology and biofeedback and dream interpretation and all these kinds of different I Ching systems that were just kind of like maybe at my age were just like fun and introductions to, and so I kind of knew about them and I played with them with people sometimes, but it wasn't like here's the lesson on I Ching and here's the
Yeah.
class on this. Um, there were some classes on logic, and there were some kind of classes that went into some dream interpretation, and there were people you could talk to that were like really into it and had a lot more knowledge from their walks of life. But it was just this um, collection of energy and this metaphysical style of upbringing where it was not a religious based kind of a thing. It was very much just a spiritual based kind of thing.
Mm.
And it shifted along the way as it moved around. I was born in it after they'd only been around for about 12 years. It
Oh,
started in
okay.
1964.
Mm-hmm.
And so by the time I came around, they were like really in a pretty height of a lot of people using these tools. People were coming from all different places to go to this community to kind of change their lives if they were like having a hard time, whether it was an extended family member or a friend or something. But it was this kind of coming together where you could let go of these kind of life struggles by focusing on the group.
Mm-hmm.
And so it
Mm-hmm.
was a lot about being that, drop in the ocean, and the sum is greater than its parts. So even
Mm-hmm.
though there was, at the height, 90 people, but for a long time, about 70 people,
Mm-hmm.
it was supposed to be that it was greater than that because you had maybe two-thirds of the people working. And
Mm-hmm.
then another portion of that was infrastructure and taking care of like the little babies and the kids and stuff. So when I was in HMI to bounce back and forth, and we're learning about E and P and these, where you get your sexuality or your behavior from, or
Right.
everything else.
Sorry, I want to clarify because the broad audience, people tend to associate sexuality with being like heterosexual, homosexual, that
Right.
kind of thing. That's not what we're talking about. More behavior is what we're talking about. But it does
Behavior, way of
shows up in
being.
your relationships, though. You know what I mean? Basically, like it's almost like in a lot of ways, it's like either introvert, extrovert, or divine feminine, divine masculine. I think if it just to
Yeah.
gloss over it very broadly is what we're talking about. We're not talking about who you prefer to date insofar as gender or anything like that. It's just how you show up in
Correct.
relationships. But yeah, go ahead. Sorry. I want to
No,
make sure.
that's yeah, good clarification. So typically that style that is modeled after mother, father,
Mm-hmm.
nuclear family kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some variations based on if you grew up in different cultures and stuff. But this was, for me, it's like, wow. So, yes, my mother and father were together while I was growing up. And then also, there were all of these other people that I was looking to for father figure in different times or
Mm-hmm.
mother figure in different times as secondary, third, tertiary, and so on for caretakers. So it's really kind of a different connection to it, and I think it reflected into my behavior to this adaptability
Mm-hmm.
where not only in like just how I might talk, but then the energy of someone. So when I'm in different groups, I can morph into that style of that group
Hmm.
to mirror back or feedback or even transmit on whatever wavelength they're on for further understanding, if that makes
Hmm.
sense. So, which is coming really handy now. I'm working with clients because they might be from whatever walk of life and whatever religious or spiritual background. But after just talking to them for, 15, 20 minutes, I have this sense of how to navigate through to things that they understand.
Hmm.
And sometimes from way back here, channels in just the right metaphor for whatever thing that we're talking about that
Yeah.
for them goes, wow, I've never heard it explained that way.
Hmm.
That makes total sense.
Fascinating. Really fascinating stuff. How so the commune is still running? It's still doing its thing?
It's still doing its thing.
That's a
There's,
long run. It's
yeah,
64 to now. So yeah, okay.
yeah, it's a long run. There's
Uh-huh.
a lot less people now.
Okay. Yeah.
Some of the people that were there at the beginning, there's only just like a very small handful left.
Yeah.
Mostly just because of, age, but sometimes because of people just taking their own paths in life. But it's still running. My mom is still there,
Mm-hmm.
actually. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
Was there any element of high pressure, you know what I mean? Like, to stay, or was it like you could come and go, that kind of deal?
yeah, there's a little bit more of a pressure because there's this responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a responsibility that's kind of brought about at a very young age by being involved in whatever kind of group activities. By group activities, like Saturday was work crew day, and
Mm-hmm.
everyone would be part of some work crew where you're working on fixing up an old house or working on the yard or whatever. And so you were kind of expected to be a part of those things.
That sounds like
And
normal family stuff, though.
yeah, it
Yeah.
is. And there was this aspect of as we got older, then you're like being able to give back even more.
Mm-hmm.
And you're supporting other people in whatever endeavors they are trying to do, like start a new business, or maybe they're going back to school at a later time in their life because they want to learn something and go somewhere else. And we're all there to help support each other.
Yeah.
So if you decide to leave, yeah, people left on good terms and people
Mm-hmm.
left on bad terms. And the
Yeah.
bad terms would be people that felt like they were being held back or felt like, they just wanted to have their own way and their own say and their own
Mm-hmm.
stuff, and
Yeah.
not share space. Because that was the
Yeah.
other thing. There
Yeah.
was a lot of people in a small amount of space where you'd have, now it's pretty common to have multifamily homes,
Mm-hmm.
but it's still split up into like apartments or stuff like that. But this
Yeah.
was true kind of communal sharing of spaces. Sometimes, like I grew up with roommates where the one other kid that was 3 months younger than me, we were best friends because why not? We were the only kids that were the same age.
Yeah.
And so many years we were roommates, but then one time I had a roommate with a kid that was 2 years younger. One time it was all three of us in a room.
Mm-hmm.
Another time it was a kid that was 2 years older. So, and you would move around a lot into these different houses, but it was all in one kind of block, like a
Yeah.
city block. So it was a really interesting, kind of unique experience that I think I take for granted sometimes, just because
It
it
was
was it was
how it
normal.
is.
Like,
Yeah.
that's just what you did.
Yeah. It's pretty cool in a lot of ways. And then in the end, it's kind of like I imagine it had a lot of great qualities and maybe some things that are a lot better than other maybe typical American families and situations. One thing that I think is so amazing is I have friends who having children. And it's like children are really not supposed to be raised by one or even only two people. Like, I don't like even just two people, it seems like not enough, and let alone having more than one child. So, it is more of a tribal model that you were really talking about here,
Yeah.
right? And there's just a lot of support to that, right?
And what's really interesting about that is, of course, I was raised there. I lived there for 40 years.
Well,
And in the last few years that I was there, I was raising my daughter there.
mm-hmm.
So not only did I get to experience the multiple people kind of helping raise, then with my own daughter, she was also being helped raise by groups of people too. So I got to
Yeah.
truly experience that. And now I'm off in Buffalo and raising another daughter in a very nuclear family. It's just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
we have my partner and I and our daughter, and then, there's some cousins and, her brother and sister-in-law are nearby, and mom and dad are nearby, but it's kind of more of that traditional setting. And it's wildly different when there is a support factor going on where
Mm-hmm.
there are so many different people that are, oh yeah, just bring them over to another house, and there's
Mm-hmm.
other kids, they're ready to just play, and it's
Yeah.
literally 100 feet away, that kind of a
Yeah.
thing, to, okay, we got to pack up the car, we got to, oh no, never mind, they're not available.
Yeah, right, exactly. I love watching, like I watched that I think it was on HBO. Yeah, HBO show. It was in the early 2000s, Big Love, and it was about a polygamist family.
Yeah, I
And
love
then
that show.
isn't it great? And then other ones that like documentaries and stuff of polygamous families. And I'm like, except for the whole oppression of women and stuff, there's a lot of really great stuff to it. The children having like three mothers and all of that. And having all these friends to play with. My husband actually grew up for I don't know, so 6 years of his childhood and of his adolescence in Utah, near Salt Lake City. So very, very Mormon, and they just have larger families and more of a communal lifestyle. Even though the families live, they aren't actually polygamist in the modern LDS church or anything. But yeah, just that model of like a lot of family, and there's just a lot of support. It just sounds there's so many great things about it.
Yeah, there really are. I think the one of the side effects of that style of living, at least that for me, turned into wanting to be a fixer, right? That
Yeah, yeah.
kind of like when there was a lot of extra, I'm just going to say a lot of extra going on, and being an empath before you knew what that was.
Hmm.
Well, in order to help yourself, you just feel like, well, if I just kind of soften what's going on around me, and maybe if they're happy, then I can feel happy. If they're, if
Yeah,
they're not upset, then I'll be okay. And that
yeah.
that became a theme for a long period of my life.
Yeah, so Jason's human design, he is an empath, he is an open emotional center. He also has gate 19, which is clairsentience, and the shadow of gate 19 is codependency. I got both of those, my friend, and I came up in a completely different family, and I still did that. So we'll find our shadows, won't we? No
Yeah.
matter how wonderful. Oh, we've got Kate here saying hello, that yes, she wishes that she had more help. And can you imagine, Kate? Because hi, Kate, thanks for being here. Because I know Kate has a wonderful spouse, and can you? I don't even understand how there are single parents. I don't understand that. It boggles my mind. Doesn't I mean? And oh, hi Emma. Surprised to see this pop on you talking talking about Mormon upbringings. Emma came up in that particular church. And by the way, Emma, Jason's not Mormon. I just happened to bring it up because it's just got some similarities to that, all of that family. In case I wasn't clear about that, or I conflated it. And thanks,
When
Emma.
I
Thanks for
watched
being
that
here.
show, Big Love,
Hmm.
there's a lot of similarities in those kinds of,
Hmm.
whether it's a show, a documentary, where I'm just like, oh yeah, like
Yeah.
it hits me differently because of how I was raised and some of the things that went on with
Hmm.
businesses and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
because there was a lot of family business that wasn't just a family.
Yeah.
It was the group of us.
Yeah, like in Big Love, the youngest wife, the third wife, and she's in her 20s, and then she starts to get like a job, and it's like you can't just have that for yourself. Are you like basically embezzling funds with your side job? And
That's
yeah,
a
it's
real
just
thing.
it is, right?
No, I mean, seriously, that was when you came to the group, you turned over your checkbook.
You pooled it, yeah, you pooled everything, and then
You but so the bonus was supposed to be you take away the anxiety of any kind of financial responsibility, right?
yeah,
Wouldn't that be great for
yes,
everyone to just like, I don't have to worry about money,
yeah,
but you still have to be responsible, obviously,
mm-hmm,
because you
mm-hmm,
can't just go spend wildly other people's money because it is a shared resource. But yeah, if you got a job, you're expected to just turn everything over.
yeah,
And so there was an interesting thing. It's like you wanted to get a job to help support, and you wanted to do well at your job because that meant you were supporting even more. But then there's also this, well, I don't have to
mm-hmm.
be the best. I don't
The
have to
motivation, yeah, the ambition,
work the hardest. Yeah, you had to have your very own personal drive for that. And I think that was something that wasn't talked about, at least not enough for me, where really if you get amped up about just your own personal motivation and your personal confidence in things, well, then you're going to just be doing it for yourself, and then it's going to benefit everyone else
mm-hmm.
versus the impetus of doing it to benefit everyone else, and then you'll receive in return. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
It was like a little backwards loop for,
yeah,
I think, for me personally. Maybe it was different for other people, but I know
yeah,
many people left for personal gain, personal reasons, because they wanted to control their own money. They wanted
yeah.
to have their own dishes and paint the walls their own color. And,
Yeah.
you know,
It's almost like you don't grow up in a way. You can't
there's a lot
completely
of
grow up.
committees. There's
Yeah.
a lot of committees.
Emma says, thanks, Trisha. You've been helping me for years deconstructing cult indoctrination. The family culture really is wonderful, and everything in my life rewarded me to be a trad wife. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And what if you don't want to be a trad wife? Do you know that term, Jason?
I'm guessing it's traditional.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's a thing on there are like influencers now. They're like they're trad wives, and so they're like teaching you trad wife skills and stuff like that. Yeah,
Oh,
traditional.
yeah.
Yeah.
What if you want to be just your own person?
Yeah, what if you want to be yeah, what if you don't even want to have children? What if you don't want to get married? What, there's all kinds of when there are other people who are weighing in on your foundational life choices. So, gosh, if only we could figure out that balance as humanity. So you're talking about how you came up and basically came up with some of your same challenges that, like I said, I came up with as well because we have some similar things about our default to energy mechanics, I think. So, how tell us about because we entitled this Sacred Subconscious because you came up in sacred community. You work in sacred energy healing work and working with the subconscious. Maybe just talk about that piece, adding that deep understanding and techniques of actually communicating with the subconscious. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So, and it was a journey to understand it for sure.
Yeah.
And I had my awakening to it in it started in 2012,
Oh, okay.
and it
Time ago.
it was, yeah, that's when the start happened. But then the
Mm.
true understanding and the real like full on clarity came about 6 years later in
Okay.
2018.
Uh-huh.
And what's interesting is that in both cases it followed a divorce
Mm.
or a separation and then
Mm-hmm.
divorce.
Yeah.
Um, there was this underlying aspect of growing up where I felt a lot of things, and I knew myself and wasn't able to communicate how I felt, what was going on, and I want to say energetically because it wasn't even emotionally. I would get
Mhm.
frustrated because I couldn't communicate the feelings of energy that was going on in my body.
Mm.
So I felt very misunderstood.
Yeah.
And that's to no one else's fault because, they didn't understand what was going on and I couldn't communicate what was going on. So it had to happen at a later time when I then started to realize, oh, I was feeling these other people connecting with me. And sometimes it would be genuine, but other times it would be
Oh,
disingenuous.
right.
And that disingenuous feeling, I was supposed to accept as it being genuine.
Mhm. Mhm.
So then I'm like, there was this incongruency of a feeling and an energy coming from something that I was then supposed to be accepting.
Yeah.
So then there it became a lot of faking.
Mhm.
And so the faking and
You mean you
doing
faked too because you're not sure how to
doing
respond?
a well, like for example, I would do some video production or something,
Mhm.
or do some project, and some people, because I could tell from them, they really loved it. And other
Mhm.
people would say the same thing, but I could tell that something was different, something was
Mhm.
off,
Mhm.
and I already knew that it could have been better. Like, because I was procrastinating or I was rushing things at the end, or I knew some things that because I was so detail oriented, whatever. But that's when I would feel it. And
Mhm.
so, especially in times of praise, there would be this thing that's like, it doesn't, what you're saying doesn't match what I feel energetically from you.
Mm.
So there
Mhm.
was a lot of unpacking later in life to heal a lot of that, to
Yeah.
heal that kind of subconscious thing that I shifted in myself to by repetition. Like, okay, I'm just supposed to say thank you. I'm just supposed to say, be humble, be, modest from whatever was done. And just, even though I didn't feel it, like I was just supposed to say it. I'm just supposed to say it. I'm just supposed to
Mm.
say it. And so I had to then realize that how do I break free from that cycle of communi- miscommunication from one to the other, but then know what's really genuine. And so sometimes I would call them out on it, or I would say, things, I would just throw it off by myself by saying, well, thank you. It could have been better. And then list off the different things that could have changed. But more and more, as I was working on it myself to just release it, that's when I saw that it was occurring less and less and less.
Mm.
Which
What do you mean
brought
to release what aspect of it?
to
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
release yeah, no, to release that um that connection to being
Oh.
misunderstood.
Oh,
To
oh, okay.
release that
Uh-huh.
connection to dis or incongruent feelings and energy from others.
Okay.
And for I think we may have talked about this, feeling mixed up, you then attract mixed up
Oh, yeah.
feelings.
Of course. Yes, yes, yes.
And so as that I became more clear, then I was aligned to more clear, and then more
Mhm.
clear things would come. And so including, my current relationship and, now new 21-month-old daughter, there's a much more clear connection to what's happening presently
Mhm.
than before, where things were just misunderstood, or
Right.
not that it doesn't still happen,
Yeah.
but that the feeling of it energetically is much more on par because that alignment is there.
Right.
And it actually helped me develop a tool that I share with people called the ABGs. The ABGs is for awareness, breathe, and gratitude.
Mhm.
The awareness is when anything comes into your field that you notice,
Mhm.
specifically something that feels off, whether that feels off just subtly, through intuition, feels off through emotion, feels off through thought, like a thought pattern, or
Mhm.
physically is occurring to you, like some sort of ailment or pain in the body, that these are all just messages.
Hmm.
And they come from the most subtle to the loudest, which is the physical. And when we connect with it just by receiving, like the awareness of receiving a message, not that I need to change it, do anything to it, but just like, here's this message.
Hmm.
Then use that breath to calm us down, to bring us back to center in the now, to put, have power over our own life force in that moment with
Hmm.
all the little pieces brought to us. And then have gratitude, not for I have this pain in my shoulder or this headache or, this anger feeling,
Yeah.
but to have gratitude for having the awareness of the message.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
because of that, then it allows for this dissipation of why the message was there, like the oomph behind it,
Yeah.
which then helps us get back on track to wherever we were supposed to be.
I say if it's present in your field, it's ready to be healed. And it already is. If you're aware of it, it already is. But the one key here is that first step that you're talking about, awareness, because we also have a tendency, I don't know if we must be conditioned to do it somehow. But the thing is that we feel something in any of those different ways that you said, emotionally or energetically or even physically. And the tendency is to stuff it away, run away from it, repress it, or no, I don't want to feel that. But in fact, you need to expand your awareness around it, and that's then the message is not only received, as you're saying, then the message doesn't have to stay because it was received, right? And it's dissipating then.
Exactly. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is a nice segue into the talk about resistance.
Mm. Wait, before we go there, though, I want to point out because I asked you about subconscious work
Yeah.
and you started to describe different things like your empathic abilities and intuition. And I know you know this, but it's interesting because I think a lot of people don't realize that all of that stuff is the subconscious. Your intuition is in the subconscious. Your empathic nature is in the subconscious. And when we work as like technicians in the subconscious, as you and I are both hypnotherapists, then we are going in there and we're fixing all of that. And then it opens up your ability to magnetize and attract correct relationships or other things we want, like money and stuff and opportunities. But then also it sharpens your intuition. So you can then recognize the difference between I'm creating fear or there is a cautionary message that's bringing me comfort, and that's my intuition, right? But
Right.
I want tell me about resistance, though. I want to talk about that next. I wanted to point that out because you would believe this at HMI when I'm teaching. Sometimes students are surprised if I make that correlation of intuition and your subconscious. They're like, really? And I'm like, yeah, well, when you have someone in hypnosis, your subconsciouses are connecting and communicating, and you're pulling down the higher self information. Anyway, so I wanted to
Yeah.
point that out.
Or even just the higher self and the subconscious are the same thing, or it's a layer
Or
of the same
it's
thing, right?
exactly it's a
Yeah.
or there it's like, but you definitely go to the subconscious in order to connect with higher self or soul, because we can't leave out this portion of us, which is the
Right.
whole inner being. So yeah. Anyway.
What I love on the working on that level is say it, see it, feel it.
Mm,
That's how
mm-hmm,
you make a change. Say it, see it, feel it, and then
mm-hmm,
repeat. And the best way to describe this is, and for all of the listeners, you can play along too. If I asked you what you had for dinner 2 years ago on a Tuesday, probably you might be able to have a good guess if you have the same thing every Tuesday, but like it's not something that's like I don't know. But now go back to some significant life event.
mm-hmm,
Maybe when your child was born, maybe
mm-hmm,
when you brought home a new pet,
mm-hmm.
maybe when you had your 21st birthday. I bet you can remember what you had to eat or what you had to drink or all sorts of things based around those things because emotion was tied to it, and that's how it was really rooted into the subconscious to stick and stay forever.
Hmm.
And I know there's a lot of people that the first thing they had after they had their baby was sushi, because they couldn't have sushi for 9
Oh,
months or whatever.
yeah.
So maybe that's just it is just sushi. That's the
Well,
answer.
well, I was gonna make a joke about how, are you kidding? 21 was so long ago, and it may, also it probably wasn't very significant. It wasn't a very big birthday. Nothing cool happened from on my 21st birthday.
Right. So you have probably not a real, like, besides maybe extra alcohol, maybe that's a reason not to remember.
No,
Maybe
I
that's
actually do remember that I experimented with alcohol a little bit when I was like 18 or 19. I didn't really in high school. I didn't care because my father was an alcoholic. So I had a lot of exposure to it. And so it wasn't like, I don't know, I think a lot of times kids will go one way or the other. Like
yeah.
they mimic their parents or they rebel. I was a righteous, indignant rebel. That was my deal. I took myself to church all huffy, like,
Goody two
you
shoes.
heathens. But yeah, so I remember drinking at 18 and 19 because I was living on my own for the first time. But I remember at 21, I didn't drink, and I didn't drink for a couple of years. And I was like, oh, that's funny. People start drinking at 21 because they feel like they can. And I didn't even use my license for that for a couple of years. Totally off.
And then you were a mixologist for however long, right?
Yeah, yeah, as a bartender and mixologist, they said I didn't drink. And I'm like, I'm literally having a glass of wine, but they called it not drinking because I didn't get blackout drunk with everybody, until like
Okay.
5 o'clock in the morning,
Yeah.
and which I can't do. Just not interested in, and don't have the,
That's not
don't
my
have the,
jam.
not my jam. Yeah,
Not my
not
jam.
not fun. There's nothing fun about it
No,
to me. So
agreed.
I hijacked it, or we went on a
That's
detour.
okay. So
We
we
went
can
on a
go over
scenic
to,
detour.
yeah, resistance. So I have a real love of and passion for resistance. Be-
You love resistance?
yeah.
Give me
So
more.
yeah. Okay, so to go into metaphor land,
Okay.
if whatever it is a seed,
Hmm.
right? There you're surrounded by all of this resistance
Yeah.
sitting in this earth,
Yeah.
and you have to push some way, right? And you
Hmm.
can maybe figure out through the kinetic connection to the earth and gravity, like that way is up. And so I'm going to push up that way. And at the same time, I'm going to reach down.
Hmm.
But that shows you a way to grow, right?
Yeah.
This resistance that you have to then move through to sprout and flourish and everything. So when I'm thinking, how, Jason, are you going to grow more spiritually next? Or what's the current thing? All I have to do is look to where's the resistance.
Yeah.
Because once I find that, then I can give that love, give that attention, give that focus, give that nurturing,
Hmm.
just like you would a plant, and then
Yeah.
it can flower into what it's supposed to be. And so that's like the easiest way in my book to have spiritual growth is to look at where there's resistance. And resistance, of course, can show up in many different forms, right?
Hmm.
It can be, when you're around a certain person, or maybe it's at work and you feel frustrated and angry. Okay, well, there's a reason why you're frustrated and angry. Maybe it's a loss of control. Maybe it's a loss of
Hmm.
identity. Maybe it's like some of these bigger things. And so when you reclaim some of that, then you're able to release and let go
Hmm.
of whatever of those strong, tethers that were binding you and holding you down for to be felt, right? For that resistance to be felt. And the other thing about it is we're constantly getting opportunities. Like, why do we have patterns of things? Why do things keep coming up? Because every time it comes up, it's God, it's source, it's whoever
Hmm.
presenting you with another moment to move through it, because you are ready in that moment.
Yeah.
You don't have to choose to move through it in that moment, and then you'll get presented again and again and again until you finally say, okay, I'm ready now.
Hmm.
And then you move through it. And then the next time it comes around to come up, it's like a little further away. Or maybe you don't even, like, you just see it out there You're like, oh, I remember you. That used to trigger me. Now it doesn't.
I have to tell you, I'm smiling over here so much. Not just because you're wise and entertaining and pleasant and wonderful to connect with. Also, okay,
Is that something about my human design?
no,
Oh,
but we can. I'll smile about that. No, because
okay.
literally yesterday I did an hour long. I was in meditation for an hour, and a good portion of it was being a seed. And then I repeated it again today. And I have a meditation. It's actually even on my YouTube channel called I Am a Seed.
There you go. So, you guys, if you want to start working with your resistance, use this metaphor. And there's already a meditation that I wish I had
So
for you.
the thing that the piece that I also connect with, and you brought up how the resistance is so valuable. Well, first of all, about resistance, this is a quote from Marianne Williamson, and she says that our emotional and mental challenges are the gravity against which we push to make ourselves stronger. And so, like, resistance is like the gravity against which we push to make ourselves stronger, or our seed. So the piece that helps me too is because what the seed has to do, the seed holds it's a it holds a code. It's
Holds
I
everything.
it holds a code, and it's just inside this shell. And in order for it to receive that nourishment that we're talking about, for the if it's in the soil, it's fallen in the soil some divine way. It doesn't have legs or can't place itself, and it has to basically turn to its own code and feel it, basically create coherence and resonance, so that it it reverberates, it radiates out, so that the mycelial network will hear it and be able to send the water and the nutrients. So then it collapses, the waveforms of its own, of it feeling its own code collapses, and then starts to create some kind of a body which pushes against that resistance. And then it leaves behind its seed as an offering, and the soil takes it, the ecosystem takes it, and uses it, and then it's sprout now going up through the soil, and fuck, it hits a rock. And now what does it have to do? It's to go back into its code and feel its strength, and then it curves around. And the thing about continuing to go into that code and feeling it, this is something that I learned, that I studied as a mixologist. We study more than just, hey, vodka and Red Bull. Actually, I didn't study that at all. But a big part of what I did was actually studying, the fermentation and distillation process, which also means studying the botany and everything. And, like, for example, an agave plant, there are two regions of tequila. There's a highland and a lowland, and in the highland it's cold. It's like mountainous, and so it's colder, and it's drier, less moisture. The lowlands is hot and moist. It's Mexico. So both of them yield a delicious product. The cold has to struggle to get its moisture and conserve its energy. So it actually, this when it's harvested, will come out tasting more like fruit and sweetness. And then the lowland, it's very hot, and so it has to expend a lot of its water, and it comes out tasting vegetal and spicy, which we also like, right? So as the flower that's in the soil having to struggle, it will actually, when it finally fluoresces, it will have its most vibrant color, its most powerful aroma, if it has to compress into its own code and press against the resistance even more, as you're saying. So
That's cool.
yeah, I like our metaphors together a lot. It's
Let's
not
do it.
metaphor though. It's just nature. It's what
Right.
we are nature. Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, I think more people should kind of tune into.
Yeah.
Let's use another one.
Okay.
How about the lobster?
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
The lobster, they can live a long life.
Hmm.
But there's many stages of their lives where it's like, oh man, I'm so uncomfortable. I'm in such pain.
Mm.
Like, oh, and if that was a human, they go to the doctor and they would take a bunch of medicine, or they would be put on bed rest. No, they're breaking free
Yeah.
and shedding that exoskeleton because they're trying to grow,
Hmm.
right? And that happens over and over and over and over again until they get so old that they can't do it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
because they'll keep growing. There's huge lobsters, and that people like they'll just leave them in the sea because they're so old.
Mm-hmm.
But that's like they don't have enough energy to push off that shell again,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's over. And if you think about that for humans, it's like we are so about every little thing just getting taken care of immediately.
Right. As if
And
there's something wrong, and we try to correct it externally instead of internally, right?
right, it's
Mm-hmm.
all internal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, really, it's all if this is all my projection, then
Yeah.
anything and everything that's happening is coming from somewhere inside. So
Yeah.
that's why this subconscious work and this other sacred work and alignment work is so amazing, because it's like if you make those shifts internally, then all of a sudden you're on a nice easy path.
Yeah.
Sure, you can still have things that you make adjustments for, but instead of trying to paddle upriver, you can just turn your oar ever so slightly to take you to wonderful places. Go out for a
Mm.
hike and see a waterfall, get back in the canoe and go down river. You don't have to, like, hey, there's a really cold place in a cave up there, and you spend your whole life trying to get to it because someone said that that's where you should go.
Yeah.
Go be a doctor, go be a lawyer, go be a, oh, I would be good at that. Okay.
Yeah.
Following your true path is about listening deep within. See where it
Mm-hmm.
leads you. The easiest way is to do what you love. I know there's a lot of fear around that, right? Because people
Yeah.
are like, yeah, but if I do what I love, I'm not going to make any money. And how am I going to live? This is a 3D world after
Uh-huh.
all.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But when just try it, start aligning yourself more with it to
Mm-hmm.
have more love and more joy in your life, and you'll be rewarded for it. Yeah,
Mm.
maybe you won't be the multimillionaire you thought you might be, but you'll be living a happy life.
Or maybe you will that too. You never know.
Right.
I mean,
Maybe you can have both. Yeah,
you
sure.
could, but multi-million may not make any on its own doesn't make anyone happy. Again, it's always the inner
Right.
presence and the satisfaction that starts only it not only starts, it just is within. That's it. Doesn't start there, it just is. Nothing external
If you just
is.
want stuff,
Mhm.
that's pretty external. But if you're
Yeah.
wanting connection and all that, then it's going to be whatever form and shape that it takes.
Tell me about inner child work.
Inner child work. So I had to do a lot of inner child work on myself.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was based on what we talked about, what I was talking about earlier, of kind of not being understood in
Mhm.
ways.
Yeah. Mhm.
And there was a young part of me from the age of about, I would say, really started happening pretty strongly around 8 or 9
Mhm.
until about 12. And for me, I pubescence didn't happen till like 14 and a half, a little bit later than most these days. But
Mm.
um, so in that period of time, I had so many powerful energy experiences.
Really?
I would be sleeping at night and I would see energy,
Uh-huh.
and it would be uh, like green, like fractals and green. It would be purple, and there would be an experience that I could sometimes even watch. And one time it became very clear because it showed up as like one of those EKGs, where it's like boop,
Mhm.
boop.
Yeah.
And every time that it was like climbing up, there was this building up of energy within me. And when it would get to the top and start dropping down, it would physically hurt.
Oh.
But I wouldn't wake up all the time. And then I would watch it, and it was just like it would come up, and then and I would be this anxiety of it climbing, and then this drop, and anxiety of it's climbing, and this drop, and then one time it would go really, 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 really high, and then when it would drop, I would wake up screaming, and sometimes I would be somewhere else,
But you were okay, but were you
like literally
asleep
somewhere else.
dreaming, or do you think these were like astral projections, astral experiences?
I don't know.
They're very, there's some kind of, I think there's some kind of astral experience because
When
they're
I
too
when I think
visceral.
about it in the scientific realm, I could
Uh-huh.
say that maybe my sugar levels were off and I was having a physiological experience, but I also was sleepwalking.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So I would wake up in facing into my closet, screaming, and there'd be clothes in front of me. I woke up one time. This is the craziest one. I think the craziest one, besides where I walked out of the house and went to the next door neighbor. But I was down the hall into another bathroom, staring at myself in a mirror,
Ooh, that's creepy. You wake up looking at yourself?
screaming.
Ah, that's super creepy.
Imagine being someone's parent of a child that's like wandering out of the house, and
Mm-hmm.
we had all the houses had like house alarms that like got
Mm-hmm.
activated at midnight.
Mm-hmm.
And so for intruders, but like if you left, it would go off too. And so I like one time I left and I went to the house next door, and I was like banging on the back door of the porch and shooting at Sesame Street monsters at the carriage house
Oh.
and banging on and I was, in my underwear as a little kid, and just like one of the times I ran back to the door, I realized, oh wait, I'm not sleeping. There's no toy gun in my hand. Oh my gosh. And then I ran home. And luckily at that time, my parents had a door that was their room was connected right to outside. So I just kind of like snuck in there and was
And you
freaked
weren't,
out.
didn't have to get too embarrassed.
Yeah.
And when I was a teenager, I used to wake up in the shower. I
Like with
think,
the shower running.
yeah. And usually like with my socks on, which was so infuriating. I would take off everything except my socks, and I would get in the shower and then wake up in the shower. That was like a panic because I was too sleep deprived. But anyway,
Wow.
and one time I went and I was like, Mama. I said to my mom, like, Mama. She's like, what? And I said, it's 11. 'Cause I thought it was 11 a.m. As if we all slept in like
And it was still
4 hours.
like the sun wasn't working or whatever.
Yeah, my mom goes, PM. Anyway, those were stress dreams. But you did some inner child work around this because this was like tell me
Yeah.
about
So
what do you mean by that? Yeah.
there was a lot of fear just connected to this energy. And
Okay.
from that, I could feel it also through not only my parents, but even some of the other people that were also trying to figure out what was going on with me.
Oh.
And I remember like on uh, like a school sleepover thing where we were all out on this farm property, I was apparently doing the same thing. I was sleeping and I was just screaming, I guess with my eyes closed, and the the director of the whole commune was there as part of the school. He was the one that was waking me up and trying to get me to come back to consciousness.
Yeah.
And there was just this connection to there was this strong energy and this fear that was connected to it. And so it became rolled into that misunderstanding, not
Mm-hmm.
being understood, the communication issues emotionally. So when I started doing my own inner child work of taking myself back to the first time I remember feeling these things and
Mm-hmm.
seeing my little self with my brighter and more red hair, and just giving myself that hug,
Mm.
because I have the knowing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this person
Yeah.
has the knowing of what that person was going through.
Right.
And that's like when other people do inner child work, that's the thing that you got to know. It's like you are the one that truly knows what you needed. And to be able to give that to yourself in just the right way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's closing a loop. That is grounding. That is completion. It's making a cipher out of something that was a live wire. Yeah.
And I know there's people that say there are no inner child because this is the inner child.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, of
right? This
course.
is the same. This is the same because you take away time and space.
Yeah.
This is so.
Hmm.
But in order to get there, a lot of times it's really helpful to have that third orthogonal perspective
Hmm.
of there's little Jason and
Yeah.
what does he need right now?
Hmm.
He needs someone that really truly understands him. Well, guess what? There's no better person that really truly understands him than this Jason.
Yeah.
And so I can give myself exactly what I needed, that compassion, that understanding,
Hmm.
that love. And it did a lot of amazing things to shift my life forward because of it. It released a lot of um, connection to why I didn't feel supported, connection to um, why or resistance to it, or why I didn't feel emotionally supported, financially supported, which is funny in a place where it's all
You
supposed to be
don't.
about
You
support.
don't
Like
have to think about it.
you
Yeah.
don't have to think about this, but there was something that was still underlying that it didn't matter where
Hmm.
I grew up, and maybe same thing with you or other people. It doesn't matter necessarily where you grew up. You
Yeah.
can still have these themes come through.
Right.
And once I realized more of that, it was a way to release a lot of physical pain.
Right.
Like I broke my back when I was 19, but
Mm.
I didn't know it.
Mm.
They did x-rays and it was a hairline fracture, so it was never actually correctly, identified. And then I had a bad back
Mm.
for
Bad support. Right.
25 years of my life until
Hmm.
it got really bad. And then I went in and got an MRI and like, oh yeah, your spine's broken, dude. Like, how
Oh.
are you even like walking around?
Wow.
But that's the same kind of thing. I knew there was something different and wrong.
Hmm.
My pain was real, even more so now that later on I found out that my back was broken. And the feelings I would get from people were like, oh, that's Jason, oh, he
Hmm.
can't do this.
Yeah.
He's weak.
Yeah.
He has a bad back. And so
Hmm.
it starts like piling on when if they knew that my back was broken, well, they would like if someone's back's broken, you have a whole different set of compassion versus like, oh, he just says his back hurts. He's
Mm.
probably just trying to get out of working on the work crew or whatever it is. Oh, he's supposed to go to this big meeting, but he threw his back out. So there was a lot of that feeling that was connected to it. And I know a lot of that's internal because I'm the only one that can feel what I feel. Someone
Hmm.
can't make me
Make me
feel
feel.
anything.
Yeah, we don't make everyone omit that from your
Right.
language forever. There's no such thing as make
Forever.
me feel.
He
Yeah.
made me feel so sad.
Yeah.
Oh, really? No, I think you're just feeling sad because there's something that's resisting to come up and be healed, right?
And it's perfectly typical for there to be an external environment and we have a response to it that is sad. But isn't it better? And I'm not saying, I'm not preaching to you, Jason. I know you're the choir. Isn't it better that we can recognize that I have mastery over my own emotional state? Don't we prefer that? Isn't that a better way to live?
It starts with awareness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because if you don't even know what's going on, then it's really easy to dismiss. It's really easy, like you said, just stuff it down, compartmentalize it. Oh, I can't cry right now. I
Mm-hmm.
got to go do this thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'll
Yeah.
just do it later. But then each time it happens,
Not really looking
you're
forward to the
you're
cry.
you're pulling a piece of every single time that you didn't address it.
Mm-hmm.
Some part of that comes up, which you people wonder why there's midlife crises because you spent all of your life stuffing something down. At some point it's just gonna blow.
It's a compounding effect. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It has
What I
to
love
go.
about it though, what I love about the healing aspect is it doesn't matter when you start, you're healing back all of the time.
Yes. And it doesn't take linear amounts of time. You know what
Right.
I mean? It's not like, oh, I got here. It took me 45 years to get here. I'm going to have to 45 years of correction. The healing is like, it's exponential. And you'll
Yeah.
see this with people who, like, for example, an amplified, a more extreme version of any kind of healing is if there's like addiction. And when the addiction takes hold, the person tends to have a kind of emotional arrested development at that age. But then they, get sober. They not only get sober and stop using, but they actually heal. They do their healing work. And it's not like, oh, well, I was an addict for 10 years. It's going to take me 10 years to catch up to myself. It also has a much more expedited, accelerated effect. And that's all healing does. Yeah.
I
I
like
saw
the.
this
Oh,
video. Oh, sorry, you go ahead.
okay. Well, I just to expand on that just a
Yeah.
little bit. When I'm working with people, we talk about how whenever it first happened, whatever the thing is,
Hmm.
when you were a little kid, baby, whatever, or maybe as an adolescent, there's that initial kind of waveform
Hmm.
of, okay, this is now a thing that maybe it's part of your soul contract. This is coming in because it's part of what you're here to work through,
Hmm.
work on, however you want to see it. And so then that thing, maybe it's abandonment,
Hmm.
right? Maybe it has something with your parents, whatever. And then you go through life and then you have your first relationship. And then abandonment comes up again,
Yeah.
right? And then maybe it's the second, third, or maybe it's something other connected, abandonment. So you have this waveform, right? And then, like we talked about, there's this building of it. When you do decide to work on it, that waveform, which is like, like this and like this and like this, it gets narrower and narrower and narrower and narrower until it does eventually get to that place of flatness
Hmm.
where you truly can talk about, some maybe horrific thing where the very first time you truly felt abandoned and it scarred you, except for that it's healed now. It's
Yeah.
healed in a way because you release that attachment to it that was trying to show you that you could get through it, trying to show you the other side of it. Like, what
Hmm.
is the opposite of that? Well, maybe it's the love of yourself,
Right.
right? That
Yes.
release of codependency or whatever it may be.
I remember I had a healing experience, and this is over a decade ago, but I was listening to some podcasts, and they're like, "Oh, forgiveness sets you free and doesn't set the other person free." All of that, and I was like, "Yeah, I get that." But I had this traumatic event as a child. I mean, I was sexually assaulted, and that's really hard. I mean, like going in, it's your body, yeah. And as a child, and there's all this stuff, it was really mangled. And I was like, what do I need, a lobotomy? Like, how can I think of an event and then I don't have that reverberation, that wave of pain? And so I was actually driving and I pulled my car over and I was so annoyed, so frustrated. I pounded my fists on the steering wheel and I said to the angels, to me, I was saying it to the angels, I don't know how to release this, like this unforgiveness, but I'm willing to. And then I left it alone. And then I didn't think about it again. And then I don't know, at some point later, probably weeks or maybe even months, I thought about it and I was like, oh, I don't feel that wave that you're talking about, that wave of pain. I didn't need a lobotomy. I could remember the events. And it was just like when you watch a movie, you remember the
Exactly.
story, you know?
Right.
And so, and to say that it wasn't, maybe it's not perfectly cleaned up, but cleaned up a big part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And to use the movie analogy, I use that a lot because we can watch movies and we can get into it. We
Mm-hmm.
can cry because we're connecting with the scene and the characters and we're feeling it. Then the movie's over.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not something that's like, oh my gosh, you can talk about the movie the next day from that pulled back view of, oh man, I just watched this movie and it really got to me. Like, you're not
Mm-hmm.
talking about the movie and then automatically crying
Mm-hmm.
because it's a thing that happened. You watch this movie and there's this thing that happened, but it happened back there.
Mm-hmm.
We can
Yeah.
carry it for as long as we want, but then there's some point where we are making that decision, and like you said, I'm willing to let this go. I'm willing to work on this. I'm willing to make this change. And that's all it takes, right? That's what we say in hypnotherapy. Like, you have to be willing. Like,
Yeah.
if you're not willing, it's not going to work.
Right, right. Yeah. It's not a do to process.
Do with.
Yeah. Oh, let's say hi to Carolyn, who's here. Hi, Carolyn. So nice to see you. Oh, nice to see you, Carolyn. And Tracy's here. Hi, Tracy. Thanks so much for being here, guys. Jason, I want you to come back. Jason, I'm trying to get Jason to come on my podcast a lot more and like basically help me out with it and stuff like that and be like
Be the Roz to
That's
your
what, yeah,
Frasier.
yeah, maybe it's like that, but I think it'll be fun to do it a bit more like a talk show too. I mean, you know what I mean? Like where we have different
Like
segments
the
and
AI
stuff
talk
like
shows that they have now.
that. Definitely not. No.
Let's do a deep dive.
Oh, no, those are terrible. So you, I mean, your contact information is in the description, but what kinds of things, what kinds of services, how can people reach out to you and work with you and benefit by your healing and all of your genius?
So yeah, my website's pretty easy, jasonshivers.com. That's the easiest way to connect with me. But I'm still very passionate about energy work. I teach Reiki. I just had a student last weekend or the weekend before. And it just reminded me so much of how I love teaching people about energy work, because it opens up this whole new thing for them. And I truly wish that, whether it's Reiki or some other form, that everyone, like, it was part of the schooling system.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah,
just to
absolutely.
have this tool for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
right? It would be so helpful to just raise the vibration of people. And then they're using it to raise the vibration of all those that are around them. So, like, what couldn't be better than that? So I teach Reiki. I also do Reiki, and Reiki can be done very effectively by distance. For
Yes.
those that
Mm-hmm.
are wondering, once you become a level 2 Reiki practitioner, distance and time, they don't mean a thing.
Right.
Which is really cool and great if, like, you have a test coming up or a surgery coming up, something where it's like a specific time in the future.
Mm-hmm.
You can have a Reiki session that sends the Reiki to that time, which is
Oh,
really
that's
cool.
cool.
It's
Yeah.
a cool and awesome way to
Yeah.
use it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so I do Reiki sessions. I also, as part of that, do chakra clearing and balancing,
Mm-hmm.
alignment, which is, it's a passion for me too, because it's really kind of, it edges over into that shamanistic work where you're actually getting your hands, metaphorically, hands in it,
Mm-hmm.
to work with the chakras and opening them and clearing them and infusing them. It's just beautiful.
Mm.
And then rounding it all up with this new modality of mine is that subconscious work for with hypnosis.
Yeah.
And I can also just have regular spiritual discussions for perspective, if that's what people are looking for. So I do a lot of work with anxiety, a lot of work with stress, limiting beliefs. I have a passion for working with people that have tinnitus.
Oh,
I've had
interesting.
it myself
Mm-hmm.
and worked with it before HMI, but I had a client that, within 4 sessions, they went from the tinnitus kind of ruling their life
Mm.
to everything's great.
Very
And I
cool.
was like, wow, like, I had planned 6 sessions, but we got to session 4 and they're like, hey, my life is great. Like, it's like, it doesn't bother me. I still hear it. It doesn't bother me. It's
Yeah.
not making me frustrated. It's not making me angry. And I'm like, oh man, it's like music to my ears to
Yeah.
hear these success stories from people having life transformative things happen that I can just help facilitate, right? Because I'm not doing it. I'm just helping guide.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we're called Reiki practitioners in that world, because we're practicing the
Yeah.
energy work and then facilitating, the subconscious work with hypnotherapy. It's fun. It's rewarding, just because anytime that I'm working with someone, I'm working on myself too. at the
Oh,
same
yeah,
time,
absolutely.
because I feel that alignment of why someone's seeking me out. It's
Hmm.
like, I don't know why, but you feel like the person to talk to. I'm like, probably because we're going to talk about your throat chakra.
Right. And it actually takes some experience, maturity, wisdom to recognize we're going to talk about the thing that maybe I'm 3 paces ahead of you on the path, but that's enough to help me to help you
Right.
and then help me as well. Yeah. No,
Right.
it's
Yeah. And
so the
everything
case.
I say, it's always like a reminder for
Uh-huh.
myself, and
Yeah.
it's a reinforcement for myself. So
Yeah.
it's beautiful.
It
Well,
really is beautiful. Ah. Well, Jason, this has been really fun. And thank you so much for coming on. I want to give a plug to my shirt before we log off.
yeah.
It says Namaste, y'all. Ah, I love it. So I have the Ascended Life store. My husband and I have an apparel line together. And y'all know I'm from Texas, so he made this design. It's really cool. I think it's really, really cool. And but there's a lot of other really great products in there, beautiful sweatshirts, t-shirts. Now we're adding tank tops. There's a really cool, how I end this podcast, how I end things is I love you, whoever you are. And so that's my tagline. And we have some beautiful t-shirts and sweatshirts that are they're a pride edition of I love you, whoever you are. And it's really gorgeous. So just wanted to mention that. You can find the link in the comments. I mean, in the comments actually, but also in the description. And so this is Jason Shivers, and we're hoping we'll see him more. What do you think, Jason? Want to
Yes,
hang
for
out some
sure.
more?
Let's
Okay,
do it.
cool. I want to hear more. I want you to come on, and I want you to do Reiki segments and different kinds of energy practitioner, stories and tips, and because we didn't really get into tips this time. Well, we kind of
Oh,
did.
that's
We're
a
just
little bit.
inspired. Yeah,
Yeah.
just inspired. Look at
Inspired
Ali.
tips.
Ali, my bird, she's peeking around. Oh, there she goes. Well, Jason, thank you again for coming on. Anything else you want to share with us before we pop off of this episode?
No, just a shout out to all those that are connecting. I do want to say you're all the way over on the West Coast,
Yeah.
and I'm pretty much on the East Coast.
Right.
And even though there is just internet wires between us, this message is going across the land.
Yes.
And so, like, people are going to feel it as it goes
Yeah.
across. And if you're listening to it now or in the replay, you were supposed to hear something.
I
So,
call it time travel because it really is. Because
yeah,
we're saying, F you to time.
right.
Yeah.
Time. Psst, what the
Yeah.
fuck is that?
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for that. Well, everyone, Jason Shivers, check out all of the information in the description, and we will see you again very soon. Thanks for tuning in. I love you, whoever you are.